relationships that involve narcissistic partners or partners with narcissistic traits, there is such a manipulation at such a deep level that you think that they're saving your life. It is that ingrained. It is that deep that you think that being with them, it's the only possible solution. And if you leave, everything is going to be worse. It's that deep, literally.
This is Your Purposeful Life, and I'm your host, Adrian Starks. I'm a speaker, podcaster, narrator, writer, and entrepreneur. On this podcast, we're taking a different approach to the understanding of purpose because it's not a one-size-fits-all. There will be a variety of guests expressing their purpose through the human mess we call the human journey. These conversations will guide you to a better awareness and understanding of your unique purpose in the daily life of mistakes, changes, and challenges, and how to put that purpose into action, bringing you more experiences of success, fulfillment, and achievement on your terms. Let's go on this journey of purpose together. Welcome back, everyone, to Your Purposeful Life podcast. I'm your host, Adrian Starks, and it is here where we're helping you shape your purpose your way. Today, I have a special guest on, and her name is Gloria Battini. She's an emotional wellness coach, and we would like to welcome her to our podcast and community. Gloria, how are you doing today, my friend?
Hi, Adrian. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing really well, and I am very, very excited to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. We're excited to have you here because today the topic of conversation is going to be taking back your power after experiencing toxic relationships. Whoa. We're going to talk about narcissistic behaviors, red flags, what to look out for, and how do you just get out of there if you do experience that. Now, back to the guest of the hour, Gloria Battini. What can I say about Gloria? Well, Gloria is an emotional wellness coach who helps women heal from emotional abuse for good and go from breakup to breakthrough. I heard that. So Gloria talks about happiness comes from growth. You use fear as a fuel. Don't let it stop you from moving forward. How many of you right now are stuck in a relationship and you just seem to can't get out of it, or you're afraid to? Well, that's what Gloria is here to tell us about today. Gloria, welcome to the show.
Hello, welcome. Welcome. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the welcome.
Well, let's get into this here. So, we're talking about toxic relationships, and I feel like that right now is a big problem and a big issue with people across the world getting involved in things that first starts out really nice. We always say the honeymoon phase, right? And then all of a sudden something comes up and then we're out of the honeymoon phase and we're like, how in the world am I in this relationship? How do I get out? What happens if I get out? Will I be judged, or will this person get mad at me? Will it cause more problems? And I think that a lot of people are in this position right now. Why do you think it's so difficult for some people to leave a toxic, manipulative relationship? I mean, why not just get out of there and just say, I'm done?
Yes, that's a very good question. Different reasons. The number one reason is to do with our brain. And it's a very interesting reason. So our brain associates safety with familiarity. So anything that is familiar for the brain is safe, even if the thing is not good for us. This is where the mind and the brain become a little bit tricky. So even if a certain thing is not good for us, but we have experienced it long enough that it has become our most familiar reality, is going to be hard to leave it. Because that's just how the brain works. That is literally just how the brain works. So even before we get to, and even before we get to, reasons to leave and all these sort of things, we start from a place where brain equals familiar, safety with familiar. So that's the first thing. The second thing is because, especially in toxic relationships that involve narcissistic partners or partners with narcissistic traits, there is such a manipulation at such a deep level that you think that they're saving your life. It is that ingrained. It is that deep that you think that being with them, it's the only possible solution. And if you leave, everything is going to be worse. It's that deep, literally.
Wow. So this idea of being in a relationship that is based upon some narcissistic behaviors, the person that's on the receiving end of it is actually feeling like the person that's creating the abuse is actually saving them because we've gone into this safety zone in our brain. That if we leave to something unfamiliar, that it becomes more dangerous to us as opposed to being dangerous right now in the relationship we're in, which is a huge thing. When we talk about relationships, there's a lot of things that comes up to me because I have a lot of people that I've known that have been in those type of relationships. I have too myself. When you are with someone who is a narcissistic person, or let's just say they have narcissistic behaviors, what are some of those red flags that we should be aware of, or women or anyone should be aware of when that happens? What are some of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the things are really early on. So, for example, is the where what you call the honeymoon phase. You know, when this is happening with the person with narcissistic traits, it's just a million times over heightened, right? So it's not just a normal honeymoon phase that you really enjoy being together and you're sort of like inseparable and it's all like hearts and rainbows and all that kind of stuff. When it involves a person with narcissistic traits, it's literally taken to the next level, to the point that actually the jargon, the term that is used in the field is love bombing, because it gets that intense. So the person showers
Love
you
bombing.
with gifts, you know, literally the representation of that. Imagine, right? The representation of the words, you know, love bombing, literally. So showering you with gifts over gifts, you know, promises, big words and big promises, very early on in the relationship, and expensive gifts, wanting to be part of your familiarity straight away. So meeting the family, meeting the friends straight away, you know, everything very involved since the very beginning. Now, I'm not saying that every relationship that is like this is a toxic one, because obviously there are exceptions, but this is considered a red flag, because things should, you know, we should adapt. You know, we are two different peoples coming together. We need time to adapt to each other's, you know, dynamics and get to know each other. And, you know, love isn't always, you know, coming like in the movies. It takes time to actually fall in love with someone. Again, you know, there are exceptions, of course, but this is this is a sign that you can definitely notice early on, for sure.
That's a good one to bring up, the red flag one, because when I think about it, usually sometimes in relationships, that person will say, oh, I want you to meet my family. I want you to meet my friends. I want you to meet all these people. It can become very overwhelming because in your eyes, you're thinking, whoa, wait a minute. I'm trying to get to know you. I'm not ready to meet everyone else right now. We don't know how far this thing's going to go.
Yeah.
But then here comes sometimes the self-blame, right? That person will make you feel guilty about not doing that. And then you just fall into this trap of pleasing them, which happens. And then you start saying to yourself, okay, well, how do I keep this person happy and keep everything smooth? How does a person become a narcissist, Gloria? I mean, are they born with this? Or is this something they develop over time because they went through it as a child? I mean, where does this come up from?
Yeah, so a lot of it comes definitely from childhood experiences. A lot of it comes from neglect. Or from having narcissistic parents. So, you know, when we were saying how the brain, equals safety with familiar. So if they're in their early childhood environment, which is when we develop our brain and we developed, you know, we learn who we are in the world, right? So we learn how to behave and everything. If one of the parents or both the parents were either narcissists or people with narcissistic traits and behaviors, then that's what the child has seen, right? And it's what the child is going to think that it's normal behavior, because it simply is what they were used to since a very young age, right? But obviously there are different ways then to grow up. Someone, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that because you had narcissistic parents, you have narcissistic traits yourself and narcissistic behavior yourself. No, absolutely not. But that is definitely one of the things that would definitely happen. Some people say it's also genetics. I would say question mark. I would say a little bit of a question mark on that. I don't know if there's such a narcissistic gene as such. But what is the main characteristics of people with narcissistic traits is that they don't have empathy. So whenever their primary mechanism is for you to expose to them your vulnerabilities, and then for them to use your vulnerabilities against you, right? So if you were to say, "Oh, I don't feel comfortable doing certain things," or "I don't feel comfortable meeting the family straight away," like the example you used earlier, and then the person makes you feel guilty, they are using that vulnerability against you. So you have exposed yourself, but they haven't welcomed it with safety. They haven't welcomed it with, "Okay, no worry, we can go at your pace whenever you're ready." They have welcomed it with, guilt. Guilt, shame, I'm going to make you feel bad for it. And so they're using it against you. The thing is that they think that this is okay. So they don't have the empathy. I call it the empathy chip. Empathy chip is missing. The empathy chip is missing. Obviously, we're joking, but it is obviously a very serious matter. But the empathy is not there, and therefore they think that kind of behavior is just what it is. They don't see it a different way for it. They don't see a different way for it.
I like how you brought up the empathy chip because, yeah, it is true. We can laugh about it. It is true. They need to put it back in their head wherever it goes because that is missing in that relationship of understanding the other person. I can tell from personal experience that I was the person on the receiving end of a lot of it for years when I was younger. And I was the person that was pleasing a lot. What can I do? What did I do wrong? How can I fix this, so to speak? The word fix just became fixed into my brain that it was always my issue. And I never realized at that time that I was involved in relationships that were based on narcissistic behaviors. But I was a person that was pretty much being manipulated into doing certain things I didn't want to do, especially if I didn't want to do it. For instance, like seeing the family right away, seeing the friends, or doing these things that typically are not my things to do. But I did it anyway out of despite to prevent tension. Now I'm in a place in my life where it's like, hey, I don't want to do this. I'm not going to do it. That's just me. If I got to leave this planet by myself single, I'm good with that. So I have really that self-love. But I want to talk about your journey because obviously this is your specialty of helping people, helping women get out of these toxic relationships because they're afraid to. They don't know where to go, what next steps to take. I want to talk about the steps you took. I want to travel down memory lane here a little bit with you. You were involved in a 14-year relationship, and it was over a few years ago that you decided that I need to get out of here. What caused you, Gloria? Or can you explain some of the feelings of staying in the relationship that long? And what was the triggering moment? That moment I call it the human mess that becomes a process where you decided that, I'm getting my bags. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm getting the hell out of here.
It was literally, I don't know where I'm going. It was literally that way. It was literally like, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm getting out of this 100%. So, but this shows you, that you get to a point where you're literally pushed, where you don't even care whether you have somewhere else to go or not. You just need to get yourself out of that situation. That's how, how strong it is. That's how intense it is. So I throughout the relationship, I had developed high functioning anxiety and OCD. And this was because of all of the dynamics that were going on. I always blamed a high pressure job that I had. And maybe now, thinking back, I say, well, maybe there was a little bit of that as well, but analyzing the whole relationship and really reflecting on the dynamics and the things that I was exposed to every single day, yes, you would get anxiety and OCD probably, right? So it doesn't actually surprise me. And so anyway, so I was there really struggling with anxiety and OCD. I had OCD to a point where it literally took me over an hour to leave the house in the morning, and it was really bad. Yeah, and I got to a point where I couldn't organize my thoughts. And so I decided to go see a coach for OCD and to help me with anxiety. And fair enough, she did. She really helped me a lot. She helped me understand what OCD was. She helped me understand that I could let go of those compulsions. For everyone listening, if you don't know what OCD is, it's a obsessive compulsive disorder, and it is an anxiety disorder. And it basically is when you have to perform certain rituals, certain little things, because otherwise you think that something really bad is going to happen. So let's say before leaving the house, I had this anxiety that I had to check 3 times the windows, that I had to check the doors, all of the doors around, all of the windows, move the curtains in a certain position, make sure that the remote control was like facing a certain way. Like literally to this point, people who are listening who have OCD are probably nodding. They're like, oh my God, yes, this is so familiar.
For me, Gloria, just to slowly interject here, my OCD developed heavily too over time. And I had the OCD of always making sure that the sink was turned off, the faucet. So I had to go back a few times in the bathroom, turn the light on, make sure it's off, come out, go back in.
Yeah, absolutely. And all you're looking for in these moments, and this is what I've come to realize through the process of working with this coach, is all you're looking for is literally safety. It's like your brain asking you, get somewhere safe, because look, we are looking for safety in everything. We have to make sure that the sink is closed or the door is locked in a certain way, because that makes you feel safe, because your underlying thing that is going on for you is non-safety, is unsafety, literally, right? So your brain gets to this point. And anyway, so I was working with this coach for about 18 months, and I was able to overcome. I had about one of the first exercises we did was to write down all of the compulsions that I had within the 24 hours. And they were about 40 to 45. I can't remember the exact number, but it was over 40. And it was taking up so much of my time. And anyway, so over 18 months, we managed to, over 18 months, we managed to halve that number. So I went from 40 down to 20. Now, if you listeners out there, if you have as many OCDs and all of a sudden they get halved, you gain a lot of brain space. You gain a lot of clarity. You gain a lot of breathing, right, in your thoughts. All of a sudden, it's not so busy up there anymore. And so what happened is that I sort of started, because I had more space, I started to notice a lot of the things that were happening that my brain wasn't able to see because it was too busy trying to let me find safety in OCD, in compulsions, right? So I started noticing things, and I started observing. I became an observer. And I was like, oh, I don't like this behavior. Let me do something about it. So I would question it, and I would get gaslighted. But for the first time, I was aware that this was happening. And this had probably happened for like 13 years, 12 years before, right? But for the first time, I was actually aware. I was like, no, this is what I'm saying. Like, you cannot flip. In Italian, we say flip the frittata your way. You cannot do that, right? So I all of a sudden, everything became a lot clearer. And it took me a little while because I'm my zodiac sign is Cancer, and we cling.
So is mine. That's mine.
We cling. We like to stay there. right? We're like, I want to make sure I've done everything I
The
possibly
storm has
can.
basically knocked everything down.
Right?
We're still like trying to hold on to something.
Yeah, right? We are like, please, I'm not a quitter. Right? So I wanted really to make sure that I had actually done everything that I could be doing, everything that was in my power to do that. So I after all this, I was able to see him for the person that he actually was. And so I observed for a little while, and then I started noticing more and more of those behaviors. And then on a Sunday afternoon, it was literally my own body that I hadn't planned it at all to do it that way, but I was thinking about it. And then one Sunday afternoon, one of those behaviors came back, and my body literally, like my hands literally pushed him back, literally. And I was like, it felt almost like it wasn't me. You know what I mean? Like it was some sort of like force inside of my body and pushed him away. And I was like, no, sorry, that's it. I'm done. This cannot carry on anymore. And that's when I left. I had, like I said, I had nowhere to go. But you will be surprised. I'm a person who has a lot of faith. I am very spiritual, and I did not have a clue where to go. I don't have family in this country. I'm Italian. I live in the UK. I don't have any family in this country. And the moment I made that decision, it's like all of the pieces of the puzzle were coming together, and the amount of support that I received from not knowing where to go, I all of a sudden had 2 places lined up just for synchronicities, just for synchronicities. And everything happened. It's almost like unfolded because I had made that decision, right? So I had gone there, and the universe was like, yes, red carpet.
There you go.
Right?
Like I've been trying to tell you this the whole entire time, these red flags, and now you get a red carpet for your good decisions. I love that. This idea that you just brought to us about the OCD and things that our brains will create. Because what I realized through what you were explaining to me is that you had an environment where you couldn't control it, you felt unsafe. So the brain created this other reality of multiple things to keep you distracted. That way you could feel safe. But what was going on is you were not seeing the other things that need to be addressed. And once you got the OCD and a little bit in control, took it down to half, you saw someone, you were able to see now clearly in your environment, like, whoa, no, we're not going to do that. I'm not going to experience that anymore. That's not right. Things change. And then here comes the gaslighting. For the listeners today, the gaslighting that you mentioned is someone reflecting things back to you to make you feel bad about what you just said or what you did. It's the guilt trip.
It's actually the distortion of your reality.
Of reality.
It's literally the distortion. So if you say something like, well, I don't know, if you say something like, I think that we're not gonna be able to pay this bill this month because I have noticed that you have spent much more and you didn't put the money where it needed to be, so we're not going to be able to pay this bill. How are we going to solve it? They are going to flip this reality, distort it in a way that you are going to believe that it's your fault. Mm-hmm. They're going to say, no, but look, you said that we're going to do this, and you end up paying for the bill, literally, because you feel that, oh, no, sorry, my fault. In reality, that's not what it is. They are just using those vulnerabilities that they got you to expose for, at very early on, especially if you're in a very long-term relationship like I was. The person literally knows you inside out, so that would happen.
Wow, where were you when I needed you like 10 years ago? I mean, the phrase, you said, I've heard that so many times. And then you question yourself, wait a minute, did I actually say that? Yeah. Maybe I did. Yeah. Maybe I just forgot. Yeah. And then you get wrapped up in that story, and then you fall into whatever they want you to do. So with that being one of the arsenals that narcissistic people will use, what are some other types of narcissistic abuse that may happen, and what are its effects?
Yes. So something that is I have seen in with every client that I have worked with is the specifics of the narcissistic cycle. So when you are in a relationship with a person, with a narcissist, there is a very specific, and I haven't figured out whether they do this, whether they are aware of this or not. But there must be some sort of level of awareness, I'm sure. So they take you through a cycle, and if you guys who are listening if this sounds familiar, then maybe start reading a little bit more about on this subject. Okay, so basically the cycle starts with the love bombing, and this can, well, let me say, so it starts with the love bombing. So you're showered with attention, gifts, you're the most important person in the world, everything is about you, and you're super happy, and you're like, oh my God, I got so lucky, I won the lottery, right? And then after a little while, starts a second phase of the cycle, which is called the devaluation. And now in this phase of the cycle, you start becoming a little bit less important. You're like, well, but you start like, oh, maybe, they're tired. Maybe this is going on in their life, but their behavior changes towards you. They sort of start, maybe making silly jokes that are actually hurting you, insults disguised as jokes. That's a very, very common one. So maybe they start introducing those things, introducing a little bit of distorting your reality, those things, and you start like having a few questions, you're like, what, is this normal? Like, what is happening? And then phase 3 starts, and that's the discard. And this is where you are not considered anymore. They don't necessarily end the relationship, but they can be with you and totally ignore you, right? So they don't meet your needs. If you are in a relationship, you are meeting each other's needs in a certain way, right? Or the relationship's needs, but they completely check out of that, check off. And it's you are not part of their world. Now, what happens is that you would say something. You would probably, you person who are probably in love and very invested in the relationship, you'd be like, what is happening, babe? Why is this going on? Like, have I done something? And that clicks for them. And they're like, ooh, this person is about to break. So hang on, let me do something. And they start the love bombing again, right? So after a few days, they come home, flowers, chocolates or whatever. Let's go for a holiday. Let's do this together. Let's plan this. Let's plan that. Everything is fine. And your brain gets convinced that everything is fine because you're like, oh, you see how nice they are. Look, they wouldn't have done that if they didn't love me, right? And then after a while, second phase starts again. And you're devaluated again. And you're like, oh, come on, it was going so well. What is happening now? Why is it going like this? And then they discard again, and you speak up again. And you're like, I'm not happy with this. What is going on? Why are we here again? So again, their alarm bell rings and they start the love bombing again. And now this is literally called the narcissistic cycle, right? This is literally all of the phases that they take you through. Now, each of the phase can last days, months, years, and it always starts over and over again. Now, this is such a deep manipulation that you are going to think that this is normal. You are going to think that that relationships are not perfect, that you don't have to get along all the time, that relationships are ups and downs. You get, quote unquote, addicted to this kind of behavior, to this kind of ups and downs, that you think that this is normal reality. Now, if you are listening and you are having some realizations right now, this is not normal reality. I'm not saying that, every relationship is like a Disney movie relationship, because that's unrealistic, okay? we have a lot to blame. We can blame a lot on Disney movies. But a relationship can be harmonious. You can be with someone and it not be a struggle. You can be happy together 100%. You can be always, define happiness, whatever happiness means to you. You can be always content. Not every day is going to be a 10 out of 10 day, because it's life and that's normal. But you can have a relationship where it's a partnership and there's support. So even if it's been a bad day, you're in a partnership with someone and there's support, and you're still fundamentally happy. It's not like a utopia thing,
Right.
It does exist, but this cycle gets you addicted to the fact that relationships are different.
The cycle, that's the most important thing, is to watch for the cycle that you're going through.
Yeah.
And for the listeners today, if someone your partner brings you flowers or chocolates, don't blame them right away and be like, what cycle are you in right now? You in this love bombing cycle? Don't do that. It could be just a kind gesture. But what Gloria is saying is that if you've seen repetitive behaviors.
Yeah.
And what she's saying now is don't ignore those things, because they're going to keep going and going and going, and you'll find yourself years later in something that you wonder why you're still there. Speaking of realizing they're still there, let's take it forward now. Person has heard what you said, the cycles. They just realized, oh my goodness, I'm in a relationship with a narcissist. What can they do, Gloria? Once now they've seen the cycles, they've confirmed it. Now they know. Yeah.
So there's different things that you can do. First of all, I would really suggest that you start reading some things. You're just in your own time with yourself alone. Just go through some things. Start informing yourself a little bit what we're talking about here, right? Start seeing that, maybe read some really in-depth, blogs. There's loads of blogs out there on the subject. Read some psychology, articles out there, something that is like easily accessible. You don't have to go purchase any books or anything, but just do a little bit of research to start with and see what clicks and what doesn't. Now, it doesn't have to be everything off the list, of course, because I'm a huge believer that, if it's abusive behavior, it's abusive behavior regardless whether they have 1 or 10. It doesn't actually matter, There is no such thing, oh, but your abuse was better. No, there isn't, I did have a narcissist telling me that, well, but I was bullied much worse than you were. I'm like, is there a difference? Is there a difference? There isn't. Bullying is bullying. So, okay. So abusive behavior is abusive behavior regardless. So see what you are familiar with. See what resonates. And then it really depends. It really is down to the specific examples and to the specific relationship that the different people are in. Now, if you feel safe and you think you can leave straight away, pack your bags and go. I cannot say this with more emphasis. Literally, pack your things.
Get out of there.
And get out. Yeah. Pack your things and get out. If you feel safe, if you're not scared, if you have somewhere to go immediately, pack, go, never look back, change your phone number, everything. If things are a bit more complicated, because maybe there's kids involved, because maybe it's a very long relationship and there's a lot more stuff involved and families and all that kind of stuff, then you can do a few different things. So you can prepare yourself to leave. So obviously what we're talking about here is a lot of emotional abuse that is involved, emotional and psychological abuse that is involved. So what you want to do when you're preparing to leave, you want to do something that is going to build up your strength, your emotional and psychological strength. Okay. So without saying anything to anyone necessarily, start looking for maybe a counselor or a coach or someone that you can work with and that you can go and talk about those things with. Right? And that is just going to help you a little bit make sense of all of the thoughts that are running through your head right now, and just be like, oh my God, what needs to happen? There are probably so many questions right now, of course. So work with someone, start working with someone that can help you. If you do not have the possibility right now to work with someone, I would say do something that brings you joy every single day. That's how you build your strength. You build your strength by taking as little as 10 minutes for yourself every day. And this is what I personally did. For a year, I switched to taking the underground, from taking the underground to taking the bus. So I had a longer journey to work, and I could read on my commute to work. And that was my time. I was reading. I always loved reading, and I picked that activity because reading was something that I did in childhood, and that brought me a lot of joy in childhood. And so I thought that is going to, whatever it is that you loved doing when you were a child, it's going to help you now for sure. So if you were to, I don't know, if you were painting or if you were drawing or if whatever it is that you enjoyed, take a little bit of time to do those things. And that's going to allow you to have a connection back to yourself, to your own person, right? Which is what a narcissistic relationship actually disconnects. It disconnects that thing that is plugged in within you, right? It disconnects it. So you want to reconnect that back. So do a little bit of those things until you have gained strength. And when you talk about this with people, make sure that you choose the right people to talk to.
That's right.
Because what a lot of the dynamics of behaviors of narcissists is that they will manipulate all other people around them, and so they have their group of friends, and they have that and they will make you look like you're the abuser, or they make you look like the crazy person, right? So really make sure that if there is someone in your life that you're close to and doesn't necessarily like your partner, or maybe they don't know them, this is a person that you want to speak to. Okay, this is a person that you want to speak to, because they're the least possibility that there is for an interaction between them, then the most successful your leaving is going to be, for sure. Yeah,
that's powerful information. So obviously, when the person is going through these changes, it just reminded me of something too, Gloria. When I was going through my phase of trying to get out of my relationships, things that were toxic, I had to go see a counselor. And one of the books the counselor referred to me was a book called Codependent No More by Melody Beattie. When I read that book, Codependent No More, I immediately got angry because I said, I'm not codependent. I'm not a person. Why would I? So you'll start denying yourself of the actions that you're taking. And what Gloria is explaining to us today, what she's explaining is that this responsibility of knowing that you're in something that now you have the power to get out of.
Yeah.
And that person, that narcissist, I'm going to ask you this question, Gloria. Is it common for the narcissist to know that changes are happening? They don't like it, and they'll try to manipulate the person from doing the things that they like doing, or is creating the change? Will they have the kind of like that vacuum of pulling them back inward? Will they experience that?
Absolutely. It's called, there's actually a term for it, and it's called hoovering. So they hoover you back in. There's this like Hoover vacuum thing, literally like that. And so, absolutely. So when they sense that you're leaving, they might go really strong with the love bombing. There might be a marriage proposal coming at you, but all these sort of things. Yeah, all these sort of things, because, they are trying to hoover you back in. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, because if a narcissist is, obviously they're good at manipulating, they will know that, hey, what's going on here? My world's not working anymore. Let me see if I can make this world work again the way I want it to. And when we talk about manipulation, I also want to bring to the forefront too, we're talking about toxic relationships for listeners today. Manipulation happens a lot. We live in a world of manipulation where things are designed to get reactions or to get some kind of response out of you. It happens in marketing, everything that we see. What we're talking about is not seeing manipulative as being a bad thing, but when it gets to the point to where it becomes toxic, to the point to where you're going against your own will. You're going against your own well-being because you're doing it out of fear. That is very bad. And that needs to be addressed at some point. And speaking of addressing, Gloria, you're so great at what you do, and you're helping women across the world heal from this. How can, just for a quick step here, because I know this is what you teach, so we're not going to give away all this on the podcast here, because if you all want to learn, you need to go to Gloria. And I'm going to make sure I put her information into the show notes of this podcast. But for just the audience, a quick snippet today, Gloria. How can one heal fully from the aftermath of an emotional abuse? Or narcissistic abuse? I wouldn't even say heal fully. How can they begin to heal?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking that.
Mhm.
So, what's going to happen when you leave is that your brain isn't going to recognize the reality, right? So you might feel, you're going to feel a sense of like relief, probably because you left the relationship and all of that, yes. But then a lot of the stuff is about relearning, because what was normal to you, there's a very high chance that it's not actually what's normal, what's healthy in general. Like, so what you've perceived like that for a long time is going to take you teaching yourself again what it means to be in a different relationship, in a healthy relationship. What does it mean to actually speak up and not be told off about it?
Mm.
Right? What does it mean to actually, say what you feel and not be gaslighted? What happens when somebody actually validates your reality? You might initially not respond well to this because this is not what you think. You know what I mean? Because your brain is just like, what is going on? This is all different. Right? And so it's really, really important that you reestablish that connection with yourself first. And so it is 100% possible to heal, and to heal fully as well. It's a lot about taking responsibility. So it's almost like for a very long time, somebody has had power over you. Now it's time to say, okay, this happened, but I am responsible for the change. Because if I stay or if I continue with this, then I am letting somebody else decide the way that I live my life, essentially, right? So I am allowing this. Obviously, it's manipulation, so you're not consciously allowing, obviously. But it is like, if you don't take the responsibility to make the change yourself, it's literally letting somebody else run your life. And so it starts with that. It starts with responsibility. It starts with saying, do you know what? It's messy. It happened. It was like this for a long time. We can't change the past, but I am 100% willing to change the future and to change the present. And so I take responsibility for everything from now on. And, my healing, whatever it is that needs to be done. And, some of it ain't going to be pleasant. But, but I really want to stay away from, there's a lot of, especially in the coaching and in the wellness world, there's a lot of people that say, oh, healing is hard. Healing is the hardest thing. Okay, let's just say this for a moment. Right. So you're going to have to face some things that are unpleasant. But it is not even comparable to the amount of peace and happiness and joy and laughter, excitement, everything that you're actually going to feel on a daily basis because you're no longer in a toxic relationship. So yes, there might be some uncomfortable things about healing, but it's not even comparable. So don't stop yourself because you think, oh, healing is hard. I don't want to go there. I'm going to have to dig up stuff and everything. Yes, you do. But, what you have in return for it is a million times better. So,
I love that. Speaking of love, I heard from someone a while back that love is ferocious. Love is courage. And when we think about love in relationships, there's a lot of us out there who have experienced this of, am I really being loving by leaving this person? Am I going to hurt them? This whole idea of for better or worse, it has a different meaning to me now. For better or worse, it's different. If it's physical, something physical, like an ailment they have, then I can understand that. But if this person is emotionally taking you through that cycle over and over again, and you're getting worse, okay? They may be getting better in what they're getting, but you're getting worse. You have to move on and love yourself. And just know that the love you had was there. That love now is no longer there. And you're taking that love that you were sacrificing for them, and you're bringing that love with you. And that's where you have the courage, because I was stuck, and there's a lot of people that were stuck in relationships for a long time because we thought that if we left, we were not being loving. We were not being the committed. Like you were saying, here comes that the zodiac sign, the Cancer. We're like, we want to just stay there, and we're getting knocked all over the place, emotionally. And we're just like, no, I'm not going to give up. I'm just going to go in my shell here and just stay here. And hopefully this whole thing will blow through and I can come out. And that's not how it works, unfortunately. And when you realize that with Gloria's conversation today about the red flags, about the cycle of narcissistic abuse, about what happens, how we heal, then you'll realize that you're basically taking back your power by doing that. Now, speaking of some things that you did, Gloria, you actually read some books. You said on the underground system here. I want to know, what are some favorite books? What are some of the genres that you like to read? And what have been some of your favorite books that you have just devoured and you like underline them or write in them?
Yeah, absolutely. There's many. So I try to. This is so funny how it happens. So I tend to read books that are reflecting my reality to me. So, for example, when I was in that space, and I was not reading any self-development books at the time. I got into that when I became a coach, which happened after I left the relationship. I certified after that. But I was picking books mainly on the title, or maybe I liked the author. I had heard of the author before, but there wasn't any. I just wanted to read, right? I kid you not. Everything I was picking was somebody going through some sort of mental health struggle, somebody who was in a toxic relationship. It's like you thinking about the universe shouting at you, right?
Yeah.
Literally like, girl, look up, right? And so I was picking a lot of those books. Nowadays, I'm really into, obviously, self-development books because I like learning a lot, and it is also my profession. So I kind of want to, take in and expand my boundaries on that. But my absolute favorite book is called The Humans, and it's from writer Matt Haig. And Matt Haig is also the writer of Reasons to Stay Alive, which is another book that I truly recommend, and The Midnight Library, which has been a huge success last year, actually, The Midnight Library. But my favorite book is The Humans, and is about an extraterrestrial that comes to Earth and is being given the task to destroy it. And when he comes to Earth, he's like, but it's just such a beautiful planet. Why do we need to destroy it? And the spaceship tells him, well, because of the humans. It's not because of the planet, it's because of the humans, because they're destroying everything. So you gotta go ahead with it, and you got to destroy it. And so he takes the body of a human, and for a while he decides to give the humans a chance, and he decides to live life as a human for a little bit. And you see him experiencing life as a human, as an extraterrestrial with the body of a human, and then you see him reporting back to the spaceship and telling all of his observations that he has done. So it's a really, really beautiful and insightful book on humanity, which I highly recommend. Another book. Talking about narcissistic abuse, if you wanted the Bible for it, is a book that is called The Narcissist Nightmare, and is from Rahida Arabi, if I get it right, but The Narcissist Nightmare. And it is a very detailed book on every single behavior, every single term, every single aspect of what it means to be in a relationship with a nightmare, and understanding yourself and your reactions to them, as well as the way they operate. So I highly recommend that. Yeah. Okay. And a book I read at the end of last year, I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan. And I read, for the first time actually, I read and did all of the exercises. It took time between Christmas and New Year for myself. I did a little mini home retreat, right? And I read the book and went through all of the exercises of Awaken the Giant Within.
Yeah,
and I highly recommend you to read that book. Definitely,
great book.
Yeah, read it and do the exercises. You can read it all at once and then come back and do the exercises later. But I think it's a book to experience rather than read. I highly recommend that. Yeah.
Okay. Book to experience rather than read. I'll make sure to put those references, all the recommendations for the books in the show notes of this podcast. That way that our audience can have access to it. And speaking of access, if they want to reach out to you, learn more about what you're doing, any things you have coming up, how do they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. You can go on gloriabattini.com and you can find all of the social media links there. There is actually a blog that I wrote recently on there about narcissistic abuse and understanding it a little bit more, which is an initial look if you want to read a little bit more about it. So it's a recent blog in there. But yeah, gloriabattini.com, you can find everything. I also work with astrology. So if you want to combine that with your healing and find out about your birth chart and find out about your blueprint, which is, your astrological blueprint, I found that it's been such a huge and interesting aspect of healing, actually, to get to know your blueprint and certain things. Why did they happen? How did they happen? It's very interesting. Very, very interesting.
So many things about you. I love that. I'm going to put that into the show notes too. I'll make sure to put that link to the blog in there so they can have access to the blog right away. And this wonderful perspective that you share with us, Gloria, about how to get out of toxic relationships and how to deal with them and find ourselves within them. I think that's a big thing, is we lose ourselves in the midst of all this because we're trying to be something for someone else.
Yeah.
But what you discovered through your relationship was a purpose. And now your purpose is helping women get out of toxic relationships. And I love this new profound purpose that you have, and you're putting it across the planet. One question I like to ask all my guests: what does it mean to you to live a purposeful life?
That's such a beautiful question. To live a purposeful life is to... Whoa, hang on a second. Whoa, this is deep. This is deep, Adrian.
We're going deep on this one. That's why I say this one for last.
Yeah. So what does it mean to live a purposeful life? It means that every single day of your life, you are not looking for anything else other than what you're doing. So when you're aligned with your purpose, you have no lack. You have no, there is no lack. There is no desire of doing something else. There are no questions. What am I doing with my life? Is this wasted? When you're living aligned with your purpose, then it is always abundance. There is never a question. It is always answered. It is always answered for.
Well said. Gloria, it's been absolutely a wonderful time with you today on the show. Thank you for being here and for sharing your powerful message and your teachings with us.
Thank you. I just want to say just something else, because I have it in my mind since you said it earlier. I don't want to hurt the person if I leave. And this is something that I teach to all of my clients, and you will see it on my social media as well if you go and see. The most amazing thing that you can do for somebody else is to put yourself first. That's the most amazing thing that you can do for somebody that you care about, for someone else, for someone that you love. Put yourself first, learn to love yourself, and then the way that you will love will change, because you will give love from a place where you have so much of it, from a place of overflow and abundance. And that's a different way. That's a different love, isn't it?
Thank you for listening to Your Purposeful Life today, and I'm your host, Adrian Starks. Download this podcast on any platform of your choice by going to our website, yourpurposeful.life. Join me on my social media channels and be a part of the Your Purposeful Life community. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that like button with a purpose. Let's help you shape your purpose your way.